maybe longer if I do.
Joe Darnold grooving on Amy. Time for the after show. In this edition of the Improbability Engine, we'll talk about politics. And I guess probably the biggest story right now, today, is that 50 of Donald Trump's electors who voted in the Electoral College were illegally seated, because a bunch of them don't live in the districts they're representing, and then others hold public office and their states have laws prohibiting public office holders from being electors. So, someone could make a big stink out of this. Congress could choose today not to certify the election. They won't do that. Somebody could go to court and file suit. I don't think anything will come of it. What I think it shows is, and this is something that we've known for a long time, Trump and the people who work for him are sloppy.
They are. Yeah, well, they're sloppy, and what's more, I think there's a measure of this that says, you know what, we got to make sure we have loyal electors. I mean, I think that story was bigger than what people thought. If they put out people that they thought there was a chance, the selection of electors is not scientific by any stretch of the imagination. Basically, they're party insiders, volunteers, people in the district who are to the point where they can go and make this trip and be an elector. And it's an honor to be an elector for the presidency.
Indeed.
What that tells me is they needed to make sure. They needed to make sure that those people were, but they don't live in the district. Not important. It doesn't matter. We need to make sure that they don't flip. The worst thing that could have happened for the Trump presidency is to have multiple unfaithful electors pop up in different states. It doesn't even matter if he still wins the Electoral College. That is a second level of problem that they've already dealing with after the fact that he lost the popular vote by millions of votes. I mean, there's not much of a mandate here for the Republicans, although they will try to tell you differently.
Now, shifting. Mm-hmm. There's a new high school in Lexington, Frederick Douglass High, mm-hmm. and they were going to name their athletic teams the Stallions. Okay? And there was an objection to it. Now they're going to choose something else.
Okay.
And it is popular among some people to say that this is political correctness run haywire. Those people don't understand the meaning of the word stallion. They think it means just any horse.
Right.
But they're wrong. A stallion's a breeding horse.
Right.
It's a horse that is used to sire. Yes, yeah. That's what it is. You cannot have the girls' teams at a high school being called the Stallions. You just can't. And you can't call them the Lady Stallions.
It doesn't work like that.
No.
Now, this is where McCracken County did very well with their selection of mascot, the Mustangs. Now, Mustangs are simply wild horses.
Right.
They're wild horses. They can be female, they can be male, it doesn't matter. Same thing with the racers. Murray State's, long-standing tradition of racers, and before that, thoroughbreds. They're gender neutral. Now, here's the thing that nobody wants to talk about. You could have them be the stallions and the mares, but now here's the problem. You've got to pay for two different things. You've got to change, you've got to make sure you've got logos for both. It just, why do that?
But the other thing is, I don't think girls would want to be called mares. Maybe they would go for fillies, but I don't think they're going to buy mares. Now, there are some schools that do have different mascots for the boys and girls teams. I don't know if they still do this.
Right.
But back in the 90s, Bethlehem High School in Bardstown, Catholic school, mm-hmm. The boys were the Crusaders, the girls were the Banshees, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I was actually surprised that a Catholic school would have a mascot that's a witch.
Right.
But I was okay with it. I thought it was cool.
Right. The most famous one I can think of is Louisiana Tech. The men are the Bulldogs. The women were the Lady Texters
ever.
I mean, and both teams had a lot of success. You know, both teams were very successful, and so it became pretty notable. The difference with all these is that they chose their...
What are the Lady Texters now? Have they changed it?
You know, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know offhand. I'll look it up here in a little bit. No, but the thing is, they all established their programs back 80 years ago and picked their mascots back when women didn't play sports.
Right.
It's a different world now.
Right.
Women do play sports, and you need to keep that in mind because women have a right to play sports just as much as the men do. They have the right to that opportunity. So it's one of those where making the choice is smart. Why is it a big deal? Why does it matter? You know what I mean? Why does it matter? Just pick one. That's the whole point behind it. And let's be honest here. The picking of a mascot has always been a kind of subjective thing. A lot of teams didn't have mascots for the longest time. They would be the club from this place.
Right.
And you would...
Murray State initially did not have a mascot.
There you go, yeah.
And the name Racers grew up from what sports writers wrote about them.
Right, because
saying that they
Thoroughbreds
were,
was too long for headlines.
Saying that they ran like racehorses. That's
right.
where it started.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, and a lot of schools are like that. I mean, you find that you know...
But the school in Lexington, come on, guys. If you want to name it after horses... Use Mustangs, use Racers, use Thoroughbreds. There are all kinds of things you can use, but don't use Stallions.
Well, it just doesn't make any sense. It's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, it's just
it would be like calling them the Fathers.
Right. They still are the Lady Texters.
Good. I'm glad.
So that's good to know they've got their own, and that's one of the prouder names.
And I do think that it's good for the girls' teams to have a unique mascot because it gives them their own identity.
Right. I think there's value in that. I think that's especially true if you've got a school that was historically an all-boys school, and all of a sudden now it's coeducational. I think that's important. You need to establish your own traditions and your own... I don't know if that works in every case, though, because I'm here to tell you, there is a pride in being a racer that I have that I think is shared by women's college athletes.
But the women on the women's team, they all call themselves Lady Racers, at least... Up until very recently, I know they did.
Right.
I'm not as personally acquainted with the girls on the team now.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's something that's recently changed. Just because, frankly, I think Lady Racer is it's unnecessary. You know, when you've got a gender neutral kind of a mascot or a team name, why does it matter? If you're a racer, be a racer. You know what I mean? I think that's one where it's actually worked out pretty well for Murray State. It's unnecessary to have the lady on there, especially if someone can think it pejorative, quite honestly.
Moving along.
So the Kentucky State Senate has upheld and codified the law that allowed Matt Bevin to wholesale fire and replace the Board of Regents at University of Louisville, putting, no matter what anybody tells you, putting Louisville's certification as putting them in jeopardy. I mean, their accreditation's in real trouble. And while I don't ever want to see it happen, I think it needs to happen. I have no desire for the University of Louisville to be sacrificed in such a way, but quite frankly, that was taken out of my hands whenever the governor did what he did.
Now,
there need to be consequences.
I agree. The legislature's done a couple of other things that I think are worthy of comment. First, I believe it's passed. I'm certain it was introduced. I believe they passed it a day or two ago. A law that prohibits abortion after 20 weeks. Now, this tells you what they're about, because if they had made it 24 weeks, it probably would have not been ruled unconstitutional.
Right.
Because Roe versus Wade basically says you can regulate it after 24 weeks.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
You can't before 24 weeks, you can after 24 weeks. So they could have made it illegal after 24 weeks, and it probably would have withstood constitutional muster. Okay? But they didn't do that. They chose 20 weeks. It probably will be ruled unconstitutional. And this should tell you that they're not serious about doing anything about it.
Right.
They just want to look like they want to do something about it.
Absolutely. And this is what you're going to see. Here's the thing that bothers me about that is you put it in where from what I read, there's no exclusions for the personal safety of the mother, for incest, or for rape. And when asked about it, a Republican lawmaker said, your right to choose ends when you choose to have sex.
Those things also ensure that it
when
will
you take
be.
Into account rape.
Those things also ensure that it will be ruled unconstitutional.
Absolutely.
There are ways they could craft a law that would limit abortion that would be constitutional. They're not interested in doing that.
Right.
They want to make noise and do nothing, and that's what they're doing here. And the other thing, they passed right to work legislation, and let's be clear, it doesn't give anybody the right to work.
Right.
What it does is say that if you work at a union plant, a plant where a union has a contract with the employer, you do not have to join the union.
Right.
Okay. What this does is it will cause people who work at those plants to say, well, if I can work here and make the same as the union guys,
why the hell would I pay my union dues?
Yeah, why would I pay my union dues? But what happens in those situations is that as people leave the union, okay, eventually the union gets decertified, then the employer cuts the wages.
Absolutely.
That is what has happened over and over and over again over the last 35 years. It is the most, it is more than any other thing, it is responsible for the decline of the middle class in this country.
Right. I absolutely agree. The other thing that happened is the repeal of the prevailing wage law, which might or might not pass federal muster, but prevailing wage simply states that in certain jobs, a wage should be paid that is commensurate to some level of a national average. Now, this generally only applies to state contracts, but other areas have adopted a prevailing wage as well. Now, this was something that was fought for by unions to ensure that their workers wouldn't be subject to being severely undercut in costs and somebody coming in with really cheap, poor labor and doing the job. Now, the proponents of this repeal have said that, well, it adds 20% to the costs of public works projects. What they don't tell you is that 20% goes directly into the pockets of workers who then pay taxes on it, both state income taxes and sales tax on anything they buy or sell in the state of Kentucky. They then spend money and make sure that they're able to take care of a family. It adds to the values that schools get. So while it looks like this big giveaway, the only big giveaway it is now is to big companies, because they're not going to drop their bids. They're not going to drop their bids by 20% because there's already a market that says, oh yeah, they'll pay up to this much for this job. I'll do it, and then I'll pay my workers $7.50 an hour just so that I can make sure that I make a bigger profit.
It's all about enriching corporations.
Absolutely is. And the people who are going to get hurt are working people. They're people who go to work every day and actually do things that help build the infrastructure of this state and this country, and that's the saddest part, I think.
And it is, in a way, akin to the movement that has swept across the South, where they want to drug test food stamp recipients.
Even though they don't catch anybody.
No, they catch no one.
Because you can't buy drugs with food stamps.
Right.
Come on, man.
And poor people don't have enough money to buy drugs. I mean, in these states, they have discovered that almost none of the people, and by almost none, I mean something like 4 or 5 in each state,
right?
You know, get test positive who are food stamp recipients, those aren't the people using drugs.
Right. Well, it all comes back to this idea that poor people are poor because of their own faults. It's their fault they're poor because there's too much opportunity for everybody else. It comes back to this concept that the rich are rich because they're better and the poor are poor because they're worse. And that's inherently unfair.
Social Darwinism is what it is. And the only thing that these laws accomplish is sending money to corporations.
Yep.
Sending money to corporations. And we have something going on in West Tennessee that's also similarly motivated. Camera tickets in West Tennessee, particularly around Huntington, Tennessee.
Absolutely.
They have speed traps there where they catch people. They send them camera tickets. 3/4 of all the revenue generated by that goes to the ticketing company that runs the cameras. Okay? Now, yes, the communities get some benefit from it, but 3/4 of all the money goes to a corporation.
Right.
And you know that's why they're doing it. That's
Absolutely.
the real reason, so that they can funnel money from the public to corporations.
Think about the other option. They put a police officer at the place where these speedings happen. The police officer goes and writes tickets. Now the community gets all of that, but they have to pay a police officer.
Yeah. The Tennessee Supreme Court has ruled you don't have to pay those tickets.
Well, then I won't. I plan on speeding through Huntington. Not really. That was facetious, but
And of course, the reason you wouldn't have to pay it would be they can't prove you were driving the car.
well, and the other thing is, I have a right to be confronted by my accuser.
Yeah.
And unless they pull the camera down, I don't see how that's possible. So, no, it's one of those where we're living in a very strange land where people think that by voting against their best interest, they're sacrificing for the common good, and what they're actually doing is voting against their best interest and sacrificing the common good. Not for the common good, just sacrificing the common good.
Absolutely. Got anything else?
One last thing, Bernie Sanders, senator from Vermont, the independent senator who ran for president, got on the Senate floor the other day with a very interesting piece of diagram. It was a blown up in size picture of one of Donald Trump's tweets. You know you've reached full saturation whenever that is what's going on. Honestly, I think it's a brilliant move because it doesn't matter what he says in his tweets. It just matters that everybody knows what Donald Trump says on his tweets. If everybody goes back in and looks, they're going to look at it and see what kind of a slime ball this guy really is. He just is. He's a slimy guy.
But this tweet in question, if he would stand by it, is awesome. Because
Right.
he said in this tweet he would not cut Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security.
Right.
And he needs to stand by his word.
Right. Well, I don't think he understands what that means. First and
Agreed.
foremost. I believe the New York Times recently ran an article that said he has taken 114 positions on 70 different topics and has changed
I think it might have been 50 different topics.
50 different topics, and then changed his position 72 times or something. I mean,
Something like that.
Something just absolutely ridiculous. It just goes to show you this guy has no scruples. He has no morality. He's going to lie and say whatever he wants, and then he'll do whatever
It's
he
not
wants
that
afterwards.
he's immoral. He's completely
amoral.
amoral.
Yeah.
He doesn't say things because they are true. He doesn't. I'm not even sure when he says things that are lies that he knows objectively they are lies, because I don't think he cares.
Right.
It's just what he thinks of, and he says it. And sometimes it's what he heard on Alex Jones' InfoWars.
Right. Yeah, and that's what we're going to have to deal with for the next 4 years at least. And if you're praying people, you might want to start praying for the country, because there's a chance for it. It's a really high beta problem that we've got right now. Beta meaning the difference in outcomes being positive and negative. A high beta means that some good things could happen. You never know. You never know.
Possible.
He could screw up and find something good, or he could just destroy it all. And
Well, in an article I read the other day posits a situation that in the next couple of years alone could be catastrophic. If the Republicans follow through on what they have said, that they will eliminate the individual mandate in the Affordable Care Act, but keep the guarantee that pre-existing conditions will be covered. If they do that, it's very likely the insurance industry will collapse, because people will wait to buy insurance until they are sick.
Yeah.
People who have it now will cancel it, wait till they're sick, and buy it.
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? So, and if they do that, then the whole thing will collapse.
Yeah. Now, the big thing to remember is that what that really does is it points out a glaring problem that the Republican Party has in the mental gymnastics to be a Republican. State that I want to be a tax-cutting hawk, but I want to be pro-defense. I want to cut taxes and keep defense spending, but I also want to lower the deficit because I'm a deficit hawk. The problem is you can't do those things. It's physically impossible to spend more on defense, cut taxes, and cut the deficit. It doesn't work.
Rand Paul announced yesterday he would vote against the Republican budget because over the next 10 years it will add $8.8 trillion to the national debt. $8.8 trillion. Now, kudos to Rand Paul, who's a Republican.
I'll believe it when I see it, but okay.
For saying that.
No, I'm not. This is the problem that they have. They've staked their positions that are opposed to each other, and that's okay because nobody ever calls them on it.
Now they have to govern. Anything else?
Nope. Good night and good luck.
Amen. That brings to an end this edition of the Improbability Engine.